Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Translation. Exalted, self-satisfied persons who preach to the entire world, think of your lotus feet constantly within their hearts. However, when persons who do not know your austerity see you moving with Uma, they misunderstand you to be lusty. Or when they see you wandering in the crematorium, they mistakenly think that you are ferocious and envious. Certainly they are shameless. They cannot understand your activities. Purport. Lord Shiva is the topmost Vaishnava. Vaishnavanam yatha shambhu. It is therefore said, Vaishnava kriya mudra vignye nabujhai. Even the most intelligent person cannot understand what a Vaishnava like Lord Shiva is doing or how he is acting. Those who are conquered by lusty desires and anger cannot estimate the glories of Lord Shiva, whose position is always transcendental. In all the activities associated with lusty desires, Lord Shiva is an implement of Atmarama. Ordinary persons, therefore, should not try to understand Lord Shiva and his activities. One who tries to criticize the activities of Lord Shiva is shameless. Discussion of Shiva Tattva is going on. Lord Shiva is very difficult to understand. Lord Krishna is very difficult to understand. Even the individual jiva is very difficult to understand. Ascharya, the soul is described in Bhagavad Gita as Ascharya, very strange and wonderful. So what to speak of Lord Krishna? In some ways Lord Shiva's position is most difficult to understand because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the jivas are all subordinate to him and dependent on him. Lord Shiva is also subordinate to and dependent on Lord Krishna. But he's also known as Ishvara. He's also known as controller. And his control is to such an extent that sometimes it appears that he may be even a greater controller than Lord Vishnu or equal to him. And sometimes it seems, just like it's stated here, Lord Shiva, whose position is always transcendental. But then it seems that he's not transcendental. He's affected by the three modes of material nature. He wanders in the crematorium, burning ghat, smashan, with snakes on his body, and he appears to be very lusty in his activities with Uma, his wife, and gets very angry, so angry that when such a powerful person, his power cannot be compared to anyone else in this material world. So he gets so angry that he destroys the whole universe. This we're seeing, flood, terrorism, all these things. This is nothing compared to when Lord Shiva gets angry, really angry. Now there's these floods, terrorist activities, they're all manifested by the Rudra principle. That is representative of the anger of Lord Shiva in a very small degree. So powerful. What all the terrorists in the world could not have done to New Orleans, Lord Shiva's wife has done. It means through the agency of material nature. So very powerful, and appears to be the Supreme Lord from one perspective. He's He's known as Ishvara, Parameshvara, even sometimes it's called Parameshvara, supreme control. And how can that be? Ishvara Parama Krishna. Krishna is the supreme control. But he's also called Parameshvara. That's also true. But not in the full sense. Inasmuch as he's also subordinate to Krishna. But within this material world, within the material sphere, he is this supreme controller. Because Krishna he's aloof. Whereas Lord Shiva is not aloof. He gets involved. He's very much involved. Lord Shiva is like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's the form that the Supreme Lord takes to interface with the material energy. And therefore sometimes appears to be himself materialistic. Although he's not. There are apparently two faces to him. That of the great devotee, always meditating on Lord Sankarshan, very peaceful. And the other face, apparently the other face of him, is that who is procreating by uniting with his wife, and Bhutanath, the Lord of the ghosts, at the Smashan Ghat, and worshipped by ghostly persons. Persons who are impersonalists, they prefer to worship Lord Shiva, and ghosts, Bhut, Pishach, Preet, they're different kinds of ghosts and evil spirits. They're all his apparent companions and associates. However, Lord Shiva, as will be seen in this chapter, Lord Shiva, he can involve himself in the material world and apparently be completely involved, but at the same time be entirely aloof. He can drink the ocean of poison and remain unaffected. So he can move with the ghosts. He can engage in copulation, and he can be involved with the impersonalists, but all superficially. He's not affected. He's completely transcendental. His position is difficult to understand, not like an ordinary Vaishnava. He's described here as the topmost Vaishnava. Not like an ordinary Vaishnava. Ordinary Vaishnavas don't smear their bodies with ashes. And particularly the ashes on his body are from the cremation ground. That's highly impure. Even if one goes to the cremation ground, it becomes impure, and he cannot perform any ritualistic activities, cannot enter a house or a temple, has to take a bath, and perform purificatory ceremonies. And what to speak of smearing the ashes from the cremation fire? That means the wood mixed up with the ashes of the burned dead body. That's highly impure, apparently. Generally it is impure, but when Lord Shiva does that, that becomes auspicious. Because his very name means auspicious. It's stated here that great saintly persons remember him, and non-saintly persons remember him also. But the non-saintly persons, by remembering him, they have a chance, he gives them the opportunity to become purified. He's a devotee in disguise. He apparently comes down to the level of the most fallen, those who are influenced by the mode of ignorance, to move among them so that they can begin to become regulated according to the Vedic path. That is his great mercy upon them. He comes as Shankaracharya to preach Mayavadam Asat-shastra Prachandam Bodham Uchyate. He comes to preach that which is not actually Shastra, misinterpretation of Shastra. has covered Buddhism, Voidism. So Lord Shiva comes to preach this in the form of Shankaracharya, which, although from the standpoint of pure Krishna consciousness is to be rejected, but he had a purpose in doing that also, to bring people to the Vedic path, at least to the formalities of the Vedic path, because otherwise they were Buddhists. So he preached the same Buddhism, but in the name of the Vedas, which is actually extremely dangerous, because if in the name of the Vedas, that's even in one sense is worse than Buddhism, because Vedna Manya Bodha Hoilo Nastik, Veda Shrai Nastik Kabad Bodha Chaotic. Because Buddhism is atheism, it doesn't recognize the Vedas, but to take the Vedas and preach the same philosophy is even worse, in one sense. Because the Vedas are only meant for Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Cha Madhya Cha Hari Sarvatra Gita. All the Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puranas, they're only meant for glorification of Lord Hari. But the philosophy expounded by Shankaracharya takes the Vedic version and comes to a conclusion that we are all Hari. That Hari is not Sarva. Even they'll say he is the Supreme. But then they'll say we're also the Supreme, which negates the recognition of Hari as Supreme. It's a very dangerous philosophy, but it has its function and purpose also. And who except Lord Shiva could have preached that philosophy, which is highly inauspicious, but yet from another standpoint, somewhat auspicious. Highly inauspicious means, just like Lord Shiva is the Lord of the Bhutanath, Lord of the ghosts. So the ghostly existence is highly inauspicious. But by becoming the Lord of the ghosts, he gives it. They're very extremely inauspicious, but by contact with him, they have some hope of some rectification. So in the same way, this Buddhist philosophy that completely destroys any spiritual life whatsoever. It's very dangerous, because it appears to be very good. The right action, right word, right speech, very moral, ahimsa, parama dharma, non-violence. So it appears to be very good. They say ahimsa paramo dharma. Non-violence is the topmost dharma. But itself it is the topmost violence. Because they say non-violence, don't kill the animals, but they're killing the soul, killing the very existence. So it itself is the topmost violence. So Lord Shiva comes on the order of Lord Narayan to make a bridge that those who are very sinful persons, who are attracted to this soul-killing philosophy or path given by Lord Buddha, they can come to the Vedic path. So Shankaracharya very rigidly, rigorously defeated Buddhist philosophy. But actually he preached more or less the same thing. Everything is nothing, say the Buddhists. They have a philosophy to justify that too, which is really strange. But Lord Shiva Shankaracharya preached more or less the same thing. That all is Brahman. And what is Brahman? No form, no shape, no activities, no action, no thoughts. Just it is. It is, but it doesn't have any characteristics, therefore it is. Everything that is called Vastu. Now this word Vastu is very famous. And Vastu means something that exists. So we say Vastu, actually it's Vastu Vidya or Vastu Shastra. If you say Vastu, it just means a thing. The knowledge of things, where to put them on. That's Vastu Gyan. So to say we're studying Vastu doesn't really mean anything. But Vastu means an object. So every object is defined by its characteristics, Visheshta. It has certain length, breadth, height, color, qualities. So everything is defined in both groups, just like we say, this is a group of cow. Every cow is characterized by having 2 horns, 4 legs, a tail, and it moves and gives milk. These are general characteristics, generic characteristics of the genre called cows. And then there's specific cows have their specific characteristics. This is the cow called Lakshmi, a brown Holstein, and this white Nag, and specific characteristics can be given. But if something has no characteristics, no shape, no form, then it's nirvishesh, no specialty. Everything is nothing. But in Shankaracharya's philosophy, it's a qualified nothingness, but then you can't qualify nothingness because it has no qualities to be qualified by. So it's word jugglery. But he was able to attract persons attracted by that philosophy. And he also defeated others, other Kamamamangsakas and others, and established this philosophy which is actually extremely inauspicious. But at that time it was required so as to establish the Vedic path, which is without which there is absolutely no auspiciousness in human society. So it wasn't actually the Vedic path, but at least, actually what Lord Shiva Shankaracharya is teaching is not the Vedic path. It's a misrepresentation of the Vedic path, but at least it had the trappings of the Vedic path. And there was at least verbal acceptance of the Vedic path by those who follow Lord Shiva as Shankaracharya. Trappings of the Vedic path means that even today, Mayavadis and devotees, Vaishnavas, they have more or less the same culture. They accept Shastra, we should follow Shastra. They accept the sanctity of Ganga and Govinda and the same culture, Varnashram, same culture, even philosophically. There are many things that Mayavadis and devotees have in common. Prabhupada said that impersonalists and devotees, this philosophy is the same up to the point of liberation. That we are not the body, we are spirit, soul, this material world is miserable and temporary, that we are Brahman, we are meant for spiritual existence. All these things Mayavadis and devotees agree. That we are not meant to remain in this material existence, but to become liberated from it. All these points. But what is the nature of that liberation? At that point, the difference between Mayavadis and devotees becomes so great that they're philosophical enemies. Although the Mayavadis don't accept that, because for them it's all the same. So, although traditionally Mayavadis have fought with Vaishnavas, mostly philosophically. But anyway, we don't talk about that. So Lord Shiva, he gives this philosophy which is very difficult to understand how anyone could do that and be considered and at the same time be respected by the Vaishnavas, because the philosophy is absolutely rejected. But the person, Shankaracharya, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu referred to him as Acharya, Shankaracharya. So who could do that? Who could perform this service of reintroducing the Vedic teachings and culture in a manner which was the only manner possible at that time, which was most inauspicious, and himself not become affected? Only Lord Shiva can do that. So it's very difficult to understand Lord Shiva. What is his position? He appears to be engaged in inauspicious activities. He appears to be surrounded by inauspicious people. But actually, he is most auspicious. And therefore, worshipable by Vaishnavas. He's auspicious, why? Because he's always thinking of Lord Rama. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Always chanting, meditating on Lord Sankarshan, chanting the names of Lord Rama. So it's stated here that great personalities, they remember him at all times. Now, we're supposed to remember Krishna at all times. And here it's stated that great personalities remember Lord Shiva at all times. That's also true. Because to think of Krishna means to know him as a person. Nam, Roop, Gun, Leela, Parika, his names, forms, qualities, activities, and associates. So Lord Shiva is certainly remembered as a devotee, and the Rudra principle that is manifested in this material world. Devotees see wherever there is destruction, wherever there is unnecessary anger, wherever there is the mode of ignorance, devotees see that, Lord Shiva, his principle is manifested here. The Tamagun, not that he is in Tamagun, but he manifests that. He facilitates those who would be in Tamagun, and the manifestation in earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, highly violent and abominable activities, meaningless violence, Vritahimsa. That is one symptom of Kali Yuga. Vritahimsa, meaningless violence. So that is affected through the agency of Lord Shiva, although he remains aloof. How to understand? Then why should he do? If he is a great Vaishnava, great Vaishnava means he's always tolerant and peaceful, then why should Lord Shiva do this? To facilitate the sinful desires of sinful persons. That is Lord Shiva's thankless task, and very difficult to understand. Many points are difficult to understand. Why Krishna incited Arjuna to fight? Was Arjuna's fighting, that was on the Tamagun, that was influenced by Tamagun? No. That was fully transcendental. Arjuna's fighting is never influenced by Tamagun, because he is Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partha Dhanadharaha Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhute Dhruva Nite Mati. Arjuna's fighting is fully transcendental, fully in Krishna consciousness. That wherever he is fighting, then there is all auspiciousness, Shri, of opulence. There is victory, whereas in the fighting of the demons or the grossly sinful people, then all are losers. No one wins. Where there is Arjuna, there is certainly morality. So everything auspicious is seen in the activities of pure devotees like Arjuna, and that again, that's why it's very difficult to understand Lord Shiva, because he appears to be inauspicious, but actually he's only performing the function of facilitating the inauspiciousness of the inauspicious. But he himself, again, is not affected, even though he appears to be affected. And therefore, great devotees moving in this world, they also request the blessings of Lord Shiva. Not that Vaishnavas are not enjoined to worship him. In this material world, there are many persons who like to worship Lord Shiva. Devotees of Lord Vishnu, they do not do it in a systematic manner. In other words, their worship is meant for Krishna. But they recognize the greatness of Lord Shiva. But they don't worship him as an individual or separate God, which is the mistake in Hinduism, for want of a better word. That they worship Lord Shiva considering him a separate and independent God, or one manifestation of the Supreme Lord. And they think, well, Vishnu is one manifestation, Shiva is one manifestation, Brahma is one manifestation, and there are so many manifestations. Not understanding who is Lord Shiva actually. Very powerful, no doubt, extremely powerful. But at the same time, he considers himself the servant of Lord Vishnu or Krishna. So to worship him, or anyone, Shiva, Brahma, Chandra, Vayu, Indra, what to speak of the modern spate of imagined avatars, to worship any of them as a god independently of Lord Vishnu, that is actually an offense. So in modern Hinduism it's promoted that, well, you just worship any god according to your own feeling. But that is not what is stated in Shastra. That is not actually auspicious for the living being to do so. It is actually auspicious to understand what is our position. We are eternal servants of Krishna. Now, we are not eternal servants of Lord Shiva. We may be, inasmuch as he is also a devotee of Lord Krishna. So by being his devotee, understanding him to be a great devotee of Lord Krishna, in this way we can appreciate Lord Shiva. But not that we worship Lord Shiva to the neglect of the worship of Lord Krishna. Krishna is always in the center. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Ar Sabhrita Jara Joiche Nache Tare Toiche Kare Nritta. Krishna is the one Supreme Lord, and all others are his servants. That includes all, even the mighty demigods. They're all servants of Lord Krishna. Because according to the way he pulls the strings, that way they are dancing. Everyone is dancing according to Krishna's flute playing. Everyone is subordinate to Krishna. So these points all have to be understood. It may not be easy to understand. It's certainly not easy. Shiva Tattva is highly mysterious. But from Srimad Bhagavatam, we can understand what is the position of Lord Shiva as the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord, and at the same time within this material world performing many functions of the Supreme Lord, and therefore appearing as the Supreme Lord to persons who do not have proper knowledge of who actually the Supreme Lord is. So in this way Lord Shiva should be respected by all devotees, although of Lord Vishnu, although they don't make any particular separate endeavor to worship him, because that is already included in the worship of Lord Vishnu. Yatata or Mula Nirshechena Tripyanti Tat Skandha Bhujo Prashakha Pranopaharascha Yatendriyanam Tataiva Sarvahanam Achyuteja. Just as by watering the root of a tree, all its leaves, twigs, branches and fruits are nourished, or just as by supplying food to the stomach, all of the bodily organs are nourished. So in the same way, by worshipping Lord Vishnu, who is the root of all existence, then all the demigods and everyone else, they're automatically worshipped. So sometimes it's asked, well, why don't you worship Lord Shiva? We do worship Lord Shiva all the time by worshipping Krishna. But it's not the same if we say, well, I worship Shiva and in that way worship Krishna. But it doesn't work like that. Because Krishna includes everything. And Lord Shiva includes everything in this material world only. But he's also part and parcel of Krishna. So all these points are to be understood. There are many complexities. But basically the simple point is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's to be served. Lord Shiva is to be respected as the topmost Vaishnava. Even we say the topmost Vaishnava, that's also within a certain sphere. Because we know that even beyond Lord Shiva, of course, not to denigrate the position of Lord Shiva in any way, but we know who is dearest to Lord Krishna. That is Anayaradito Nunam Bhagavan Haridishwara. She who worships him the best, that is Radharani. She is the topmost in all respects. But within a certain sphere, from this angle of vision, from where we are, from what we can see from this side of the Viraja river, then Lord Shiva is the greatest personality and he is the greatest Vaishnava. But this is not true in the, from all perspectives. So even studying Bhagavatam, we have to study it through guidance. Otherwise who will find Radharani in Bhagavatam? We won't find her. She's there. We won't find because her name is not mentioned. But the only subject of Bhagavatam is Radharani. But just Anaya Radhito Nunam, that's all. Indication. So Lord Shiva's position, again that's why we have all the acharyas giving purport, which is also Bhagavatam, to explain all these different things. So any question or comment on this, please?
Sort of technical question.
Yeah.
We understand that there are different tattvas, Diva tattva, Vishnu tattva, and Shiva tattva. Also, Scripture describes that Lord Vishnu and his expansions are known as Swansa.
Swangsha and Vibhinamsha.
So, is there some name like that for Shiva? Or how does he fit into?
Is he Swangsha or Vibhinamsha? Is Lord Shiva Swangsha or Vibhinamsha? He's both. Swangsha means, Angsha means part. Not part in the sense of separated part. Just like, to give a mundane example, this arm is part of my body, but it's not separate. If it's separate, it's no longer part of the body. So Angsha literally means limb. So, but it's used in a rhetorical sense to mean, or an expanded sense, to mean the expansions of the Supreme Lord. So Swangsha means expansions of Krishna as Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, Kurma, Vishnu Tattva. And Vibhinamsha means different expansions. That means the jivas. So Lord Shiva is both, as is described in Sri Brahma Samhita. What's the verse? Shiram yatha
dadi vikara visheshiyoga
sanjayate nihitata pritagasti heto yasham bhutamati abhitata sampaitikaya govindavadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Lord Shiva is compared to yogurt, which is prepared from milk. And yogurt is nothing but milk. can't say it's not milk, but at the same time, it's different. So in the same way, Lord Shiva is the same as Lord Vishnu and different, with a different function. But you can't make milk again from yogurt. But yogurt is made from milk. That's the example given by Lord Brahma.
What happens to Lord Shiva at the end of creation? At the end of Brahma?
In the time of destruction, well, Lord Shiva has many expansions who enter into him. He is again, it's very esoteric stuff. He has his eternal abode as Sadashi, who is Lord Vishnu. Who is Lord Vishnu? Sadashi. Shiva means auspicious. But his activities in the material world often appear to be inauspicious. So he's known as Shiva. But Lord Vishnu is Sadashi. So Lord Shiva, who is eternal, he is not destroyed. He enters into the existence of Sadashi. He doesn't cease to exist. Now there's one poster being circulated. It was not made by, I heard it's made by some disciples of Narayana. Dozens of tattvic mistakes in it. One of them is showing Kailas, the abode of Lord Shiva, within the spiritual world, which is a mistake, because it's not. Then if you worship Lord Shiva, you should be able to go to the spiritual world. But that's not a fact. It's just one of the many mistakes. You never seen that poster? They had Nrsimhadev ripping apart Hiranyakashipu in the spiritual world. So many ridiculous things. Like many, many other points, much research is required. I have an idea at some point in time to do that and make a book, but I don't know if I'll do it in this lifetime. The Shiva principle is catching up on all of us.
Once Guru showed us his murti of Lord Shiva, and he said that he offered his prayers to him in order to remove his false Siva, which was like the last aspect of devotional service.
Maybe done, but not in the same way as Lord Krishna.
What was your question?
You're saying that one ISKCON Guru, the funny term, ISKCON Guru, if you don't mind me saying. It's a conventional term. Again, it's not a philosophical term, because there's nothing in Shastra. Guru is anyway, that's another topic. But an ISKCON Guru showed Sundari Radhika Mata, his deity of Lord Shiva, who is worshipping to remove his false ego. Of course, you can also worship Lord Krishna. Everything is there from Krishna. Lord Shiva can be worshipped by Vaishnavas. I don't encourage it, because what happens is then Lord Shiva comes with all the other demigods start coming in. Unless one has a very clear philosophical understanding of who he is, why we're worshipping him, to the extent to which we worship him in relationship to Krishna, then there's a very strong tendency for us to become imbalanced in our spiritual life. Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. Well, actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur at the Jogpit, he installed the deities of the linga of Lord Shiva. And Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, in some of his Gaudiya mats, installed deities, not linga, but deity of Gopishwar Shiva. Not in the temple with Krishna, but in a corner. So He's and not that they would do 7 artis a day and all this. He's recognized in worship.
Maharaj, does Sadashiva expand himself into each of the universes to function as opposed to Lord Shiva, or is that sometimes taken by different jivas, the same as Brahma?
Is the jiva Shivas? It's mentioned sometimes that a jiva may be Shiva, but generally not. That's the Mayavadi's idea. Joto Jiv, Toto Shiv. In Bengali, all the jivas are Shivas. Shivoham. I am Shiva.
Why was Lord Shiva the Ishta of Lord Rama?
Why was he? Was he? It's heard that Lord Rama worshipped Lord Shiva at Rameshwara. Although it's not stated in Valmiki Ramayana. That may be. It's not stated in Valmiki Ramayana, but even if it is, it may be. That he worshipped Lord Shiva as in his Nara Leela, Lord Rama, taking the role of a human being, worshipped Lord Shiva, thinking that Ravana is his, that's the story commonly told, that Ravana is his devotee, so to take his permission or blessings. Lord Krishna also worshipped Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva worships Krishna and Krishna worships Shiva, but why they do so, that has to be understood. Krishna never thinks, nor does he declare Lord Shiva to be the Supreme Lord independent of himself. But he worships him. One reason is to set an example for human society to respect Lord Shiva. Another reason is that he himself appreciates his devotees. So he likes to do so also. But that doesn't mean that because Lord Rama worshipped Lord Shiva, or is said to have done so, that doesn't mean that Rama is not the Supreme Lord. And then you can say, why did he go to the forest? He didn't have to do anything, but he does his own lila. It's his own play for his own enjoyment.
It's said that there is a big Shiva Lingam in Mecca, and the Muslims they do worship.
In where?
In Mecca.
Makkah. It's this P.N. Oak, who's a bit of a twit is a word. He has this theory that the Kaaba at Makkah, which the Muslims, they don't believe in any form, but they all go and kiss the Kaaba, that this is actually a Shiva Lingam. Maybe, I don't know, but so what if it is? I mean, what difference is it? Maybe they're getting power from Lord Shiva. Many aspects of Islam seem to promote the kind of, or Islam as it's practiced in the world today seem to promote that meaningless violence and ignorance. It may be. This is not for outside circulation, lest we become subject to that kind of meaningless violence. I don't know. I can't say authoritatively. There's a theory that the Kaaba at Makkah is Shiva Linga, but it's propagated by this P.N.O. Cruz. Prabhupada didn't give him any credence. He has so many funny theories. Deutschland means Daityaland, and it's a bit of a stretch of the imagination. And like I said, Prabhupada, he didn't give him any credence. He recently made some whole theories how, he's trying to show how Islam is actually, it's all based on Hinduism and this and that, but some Muslim scholar completely trashed his theories. So, who can say? Chandra Krishna. The one you can spend your whole life researching it, and maybe you'll find out. You think the Muslims are going to believe you? What? It wouldn't make any difference to them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Time is up, down, left, right, back, forward. It's all around us. According to the English saying, time is up. Hare Krishna. All glories to Lord Shiva.